Hello once again, my friends. I am Marksman and welcome to Design Side, the show about game design. If you're like me, then you love Dark Souls, the world, the lore, the beautiful symbolism, and the masterfully crafted combat system. But believe you me, I loved Bloodborne a lot too. But for some reason, it will just never hold the same place in my heart that Dark Souls did. And I've been giving this some thought. The reasons became much more obvious as I continued to think about it. First and foremost, Dark Souls' world was crafted with the thought of the players in mind, as the cursed were the crux of the entire world, and the world was built around you. Doors are locked and seemingly waiting to be opened. Enemies and bosses are standing around, almost waiting for you, and as though you are the sole driving force in the world. But in Bloodborne, you feel as though your existence is a mere interruption, and I'm unsure as to whether or not this is intentional, and I can't remember many locked doors aside from like the one in Cathedral Ward, but monsters are walking down the streets, bosses feel like they were often in the middle of something, like the beginning of the Father Gascoigne fight.
Beasts all over the shop. You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
Compare that to the Ornstein and Smough beginning. But all of this is to simply say that Bloodborne, from a design perspective, felt like they made the world before they added the characters into it. But don't get me wrong, it's still a fantastic game, though it's due in large part to the nature of the combat system and From's experience in the genre. Dark Souls, on the other hand, feels like the whole world was built with the mechanics from the ground up. It's more like they told themselves, let's make this awesome combat system, and include lots of exploration and the ability to find secrets. Now let's see what kind of story these mechanics tell. And this is the best way to start when making games. And the games that often do the opposite, case in point, are TV and movie brand deal titles. Because, more often than not, they're awful. They created the story first and then tried to bend the mechanics around it. Of course, there are exceptions like the Walking Dead Telltale series, but for every one of those, there's a game like Walking Dead Survival Instinct as a counterpart. But this brings me back to the point about Dark Souls holding a very special place in my heart. And while they are very different games with different lore and slightly different mechanics, they are so similar that they're more than capable of comparing. Dark Souls does something that not a lot of games can do. It justifies just about every single possibility for the playable character. You can run around as a level 1 pyromancer, throwing fireballs, dancing with a channeler's trident in your underwear, a badass knight with a gigantic sword, or anything in between. And the granularity of player customization takes an even larger step above any typical ARPG. But have you ever noticed that this beautiful, all-encompassing nature of mechanics meeting lore created a completely immersive experience, where not even things like fighting a glowing red spirit trying to smash you with a dragon tooth, dropping wood carvings, and what is hitting off cliffs ever took you out of the experience? While Bloodborne loses some, actually no, most of that same wondrous expandability. I felt like killing other hunters wandering around the world were basically exactly like me, just maybe with a different weapon. And while I still enjoyed Bloodborne, especially for this new beautifully crafted world, I just felt like something was missing, a feeling that I never got from Dark Souls. I've never seen anyone play Bloodborne with the same reverence that they held for Dark Souls. Like, playing the game with no clothing or armor was just kinda dumb. That the weapons, albeit creative, never quite were what I wanted them to be. I always kind of thought that, oh my god, that weapon sounds so cool, and then when I got it, it just never quite met my expectations. The Tonitrus was awesome, but the buff was too short. The threaded cane was fun, it just didn't do as much damage as I wanted it to. The stake driver kinda made boss fights a little bit easy mode for me, so I stopped using it. While Dark Souls had many more weapons, very few of them were anything ultra noteworthy. When you got something new that seemed special, it felt much more, well, special. The few things that come to mind are Quelaag's Fury Sword and the Dragon Greatsword. They were just so much fun to use, and they were so much different than all the other weapons. But I do so love the creativity of Bloodborne's weapons though. My one final point is I just felt like the game went out of its way to distinguish itself from Dark Souls, to the point where it actually hurt the game overall. Things like having lanterns make you go back through a loading screen just to rest, and then another just to get back into the game. It felt like they were grasping at straws to figure out how they could make bonfires without actually making bonfires. And it was the same deal with having to harvest blood vials, which is just a thinly veiled cousin of Mr. Estus. Imagine if instead of having to be teleported to the Hunter's Dream each time, using the lantern would slowly open up this other world around you, like the world would go black and unfold before the character. Not only would that help load in the map without having to go through a dull loading screen, but also it plays into the idea of the Hunter's Dream even further. All this being said, I love Bloodborne, and it's still one of my favorite games of 2015, but I just felt like some of these points are important to talk about, because even though these games are so similar, the biggest difference wasn't the art style, the tweaks in mechanics, or even the lore. It was just the difficulty to refer to it as a masterpiece, as I have often called Dark Souls. And I just want to mention, doesn't Dark Souls 3 seem like really heavily themed after Bloodborne? Maybe it's just me. I prefer Dark Souls. Whatever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and comment if you want to see more Design Side. I love doing this series, but it's a whole lot of work to put it all together, and it takes some time. Crystal is already overworked, but she's a fantastic artist and works really hard on the art for these. So please, let me know if you want to see more. Oh, and maybe drop a like too. Anyway, I'll see you around.